Yep. Made that move. Got on out of here.
Yeah.
Honey, but you
There's
know
not
what?
many left in that crew.
No, not in that crew. You
Yeah.
know, and you feel it too. Because the
For
people
sure.
who are
Yeah,
up
there's
to
this
date.
void.
Yeah, I mean, because we have changed so much. You know, um,
Yes, ma'am.
you
The
know
number of
the
COVID-19 infections is rising again, but CDC
giving and
Director Dr.
loving and
Rochelle
all of
Walensky
that.
says there's a little
These are
bit of a
people who
bright
were just
Yeah.
light.
doing things just to because
Mm-hmm.
they wanted to give, and we don't have that
Yeah,
spirit
they had a
anymore.
servant's heart.
Yeah, we don't have
Yeah.
that. We don't have that. Well, Barbara Jean, how you doing? Happy Tuesday. You have a
The
Zoom
San
coming up at
Francisco
6
School
a.m. Oh,
Board is
bless your
poised to
heart.
reverse
We're
a
going to
much
miss you.
criticized
From
decision
San
to
Jose.
purge 44 schools of names
That's
it said
weird.
were
Oh,
linked
my
to
goodness, bless your
racism,
heart. How you
sexism,
doing?
or other
Shirley Carter from
injustices. The
Philadelphia.
turnaround aimed at
That's
toning
right. I was
down
waiting for that.
outrage.
How are you
What
all
critics
today?
denounced
Well, of
as
course, we have John
ill-timed
Nichols. He's going to be
activism.
talking about the
Baylor beat
infrastructure bill.
Gonzaga to win its
There's a
first
lot of stuff in
NCAA
this
men's
infrastructure bill.
basketball
Can you
title,
bring that down
86 to
just a bit,
70.
Dylan?
The AP has learned the Major League
Okay,
Baseball
thank you so
plans to move
much.
the
There's a
All-Star
lot in
game
this
to
infrastructure
Denver
bill. Of
and
course, we'll be
pulling this
talking
year's
about
Midsummer
how
Classic
the
from Atlanta over
Derek
officials
Chauvin. Is it Chauvin or
tweaking
Chauvin?
changes to Georgia's voting
People
laws.
are
The
like
announcement expected
toggling
today.
it, but
This
it's
is
I'll say
AP
Chauvin
News.
for the, but Chauvin is like Chauvin. It's French.
North
It's
Korea's
chauvinist,
bailing
all
out
of
of the
that.
Tokyo
But
Olympics.
anyway,
The AP's
I'm trying to think like that. But um, you start thinking about the origins of words now. Etymology. It's important. You know that.
Mm. Important. Yeah.
It's important. But we're going to look at the latest in that trial. I think it's important for us to note that the defense have yet to mount their case. This is going to be very interesting because I know they're going to drill down. They're just, when you are playing the long game, you just take the hits in the ring. That's the rope dope from Muhammad Ali.
Mm.
They have got something. And all they need is to convince one person on their jury that George Floyd
The
died
Dow, the
because
Nasdaq, and the
he
S&P
had
were all
drugs in
up
his system.
yesterday.
That's
The
all.
Dow up
Or he was hanging out with the wrong
373
guy.
points. The Nasdaq
All
up
of the guy who's going to be
225
testifying
points.
today.
The S&P was up 58.
And it was
I'm Leah
established that he
Foley,
would
AP
buy
News.
pills from this guy. So it's going to be
Three
interesting.
minutes.
This man is going to take the fifth, too. So it's going to be, and you don't know what the police might have done to him, Pastor Thurston. To make
Correct.
you don't. I mean, there's just. I want you all to think about all these pieces when you look at this stuff because life ain't as simple as going from A to B. It's A to Z, then you come back
That's
to
right.
B, then you go to D. Then wait a minute, I got to go back to A
Zigzag.
because I didn't finish that. Yeah, it's exact. And that's why a lot of people in Minneapolis are saying we know how things work here. Don't know if this is going to end up with a with uh, with a conviction of Derek Chauvin. But you know what? We'll figure that out. And of course, we're going to have Dr. Shanina Knighton back to talk to us about the ever shifting story about COVID-19 and the information. Now, mind you, I'm not being, a smart aleck about this because I want us. Look, I want to know what's going on too, right? But we're here, and science evolves, right? So I'm good with all of that. I just want us to know, since America and the world, and America in particular, is reopening, and people are going to these sporting events unmasked. What does that mean? You know, and a significant chunk of Americans are not vaccinated, and we're still unclear as to what the vaccinations really do. What do they protect you from? Do
A
they
minute
protect
30.
us from each other? Thank you so much. All of that. So there's a lot that we just don't know. But she's going to talk to us about how we can protect ourselves. And I think that's very important, right? Is what we can do to be protected. Because they're saying now, Pastor Thurston, that they're calling it hygiene theater.
Hmm.
That you don't have to clean down places the way they once thought. I said, really? So we're going to go back to the nastiness. But because if you have to clean, you don't just clean, you have to sanitize, right? Which
Yeah.
means you need to train people, you need to train them, you need to hire them, you got to pay them. And these corporations don't want to do that. Let's just keep it 100.
Yep.
So when they tell me that they do not need, that we don't need to sanitize, no, everything's fine. I'm like, no, I don't agree with that because I've never agreed with nastiness. Sorry. Clean this place up. How about that? Oh my gosh. Ugh. Hygiene theater? Are you serious? What does that mean? Mm-mm. No. Uh-uh. This is not theater. It was not theater to me. Being clean is never.
At all.
No. So we're going to come up in a hot second. Yeah.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. I'm Santita Jackson, coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, AM 950 radio, Minneapolis, St. Paul, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Of course, we're going to be talking about the Chauvin case today, the Chauvin trial. Want to know, what about the testimony of the chief of police of Minneapolis? Wow, was that incredible? How incredible was it? And what is going on here? Because they have a no choke policy in the department, but Derek Chauvin was charged with misconduct 18 times, 6 times involved him choking someone as late as April 2016. So what does all of this mean? Got to talk about that. But we have Dr. Shanina Knighton, the PhD nurse, the infection specialist, the infection prevention specialist, who's going to be answering your questions along with Dr. Deborah Holden about COVID-19. Doyle, excuse me. I'm sorry, I'm thinking of my board operator. How you doing, Dylan? But Doyle, I hope you do call because you had some questions about vaccines and I want them to be answered by experts today on the Santita Jackson Show. And of course, we've got the great Dr. John Nichols. I don't know if he has a PhD, but he is so brilliant. And we're going to be talking with him about the infrastructure bill. What is in it? Some people on the right are objecting to the fact that it even has a section in there that's going to give money to caregivers. That is infrastructure. Infrastructure is not just physical, it's also social. And we've got a lot going on in the United States of America. We need to rebuild, everybody. What did you say, build back better? I say build back right. So let's get to it. Tuesday, April 6, 2021. I hope you meet my morning stars over on the Santita Jackson and Friends page. And please like and subscribe to my new YouTube channel, The Santita Jackson Show. And join, was it Carol Crowley? Is it Barbara Jean and Linear Bob out there in San Jose, Shirley from Philadelphia, Samantha Banks and Kevin Rouse, and Philip Sharp out there in Pennsylvania, Raphael down there in Brazil, and Bab out there in California. Daryl, how you doing, Lorraine? And oh my goodness, Melissa, oh boy, Andre, all of you all are up today. Makiba, Jarvis, Twyla. I'm going to get back to many of you on the other side of the break, but I hope you will call me or text me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. GWC Injury Lawyers gives you the opportunity to text. So, hey everybody, let's get to it on the Santita Jackson Show. The headlines are Chicago is going to be a beautiful day, partly cloudy, but 77 degrees. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 68 degrees. Scattered thunderstorms. The Dow closed up 373 points yesterday. The S&P 500 closed up 58 points. And the NASDAQ closed up 225 points. Well, the first thing is this. Chauvin's former police chief has condemned his actions against George Floyd as being unjustified. Chief Arredondo said he vehemently disagrees that there was justification for then Officer Chauvin to keep his knee on Floyd's neck for more than 9 minutes. Wow. So what did you think about that? The doctor who tried to save George Floyd also testified, and he said it is likely that he died of asphyxiation, that is, he was choked, adding that he saw no evidence that Floyd died of a heart attack or overdose, as Chauvin's defense is attempting to prove. Chauvin could face up to 40 years in prison if convicted. And interestingly enough, Mitch McConnell, the Senate minority leader, has hit back at businesses who have been critical of voting restrictions, such as those voted into law by the legislature in Georgia. He says that businesses and business leaders need to stay out of politics, but according to this Common Dreams report, that is not what they do. Since 2015, AT&T, Comcast, United Health Group, Walmart, and other big businesses, Public Citizen continues this list, State Farm, Koch brothers, Verizon, and on and on and on and on. They have given big dollars, like $50 million to GOP lawmakers who are behind the voter suppression onslaught. No wonder it took them such a long time. such a long time to come out against this law. They've been supporting the people who supported the laws. Interesting. As the variant for COVID-19 have spread, progress against the virus in the United States has stalled, according to this New York Times report. The country's vaccine rollout has sped up since the first doses were administered in December, recently reaching a rolling average of more than 3 million doses a day. And new cases in the United States trended steeply downward for the first quarter of the year, falling by almost 80% from mid-January. But during that period, states also rolled back virus control measures, and now mobility data shows a rise in people socializing and traveling, and new cases are almost 20% higher than they were at the lowest point in March. In the meantime, a lot of people have been wondering if we are going to be forced to carry vaccine passports. Well, Dr. Anthony Fauci said yesterday that the federal government will not mandate the use of vaccine passports for travelers or businesses post-pandemic. Wow. So what do you think is going to happen? What do you think about vaccine passports? Do you think we need to carry those? And what will that mean? What are the implications? In the meantime, this huge infrastructure bill that President Biden is trying to put forth to help get the nation moving economically, well, someone is standing in the way of its passage, and that someone is Joe Manchin from West Virginia. He is threatening to block the infrastructure bill, all of it, over a corporate tax hike. He said that the corporate taxes are just too high. President Joe Biden's opening infrastructure bid from 28% to 25% is up from the current rate of 21%. That's not enough for Joe Manchin, and he's willing to stop the whole thing, everybody, if uh, if that is not removed from that bill, or if it's not amended in some way to favor corporations. The EPA needs to step in. There is a potentially catastrophic water problem in Florida. Over the weekend, Florida workers rushed to prevent the collapse of a reservoir wall containing hundreds of millions of gallons of wastewater that are radioactive. Wow. Will that happen? When we talk about infrastructure, that's part of the problem that we're dealing with, everybody. Amazon is found to have illegally fired workers who advocated for COVID safety measures, and Texas Governor Abbott refused to throw out the first pitch at the Rangers' home opener because Major League Baseball moved the All-Star game out of Georgia to protest their passing of these restrictive voting rights laws. And guess what, everybody? Baylor shocked Gonzaga. They won their first NCAA National Basketball Championship. No one expected this. Wow, nobody expected this. This is huge news, everybody. They're first. The people down in Waco, you know, they're excited about that. And congratulations to all of these wonderful teams. They brought us a lot of joy during March Madness. Let us go to some good news. We have got, of course, the always brilliant and profoundly anointed pastor, the teaching pastor of the Salem Baptist Church, the House of Hope. And of course, brilliant. He's from a long line of anointed ministers. His grandfather, his father, and now Pastor Stephen Thurston II. We are so glad to have you with us today. We need some good news. We need some good news. I mean, I'm looking at this trial, and I'm watching these murder scenes every day, and it's just a lot for me. But it's a lot going on.
It is a lot.
It's a lot going on. So
It
what's
is.
the good news?
Let me see if I can encourage you and the listening audience today, Santita, by reminding us that we need to silence self-doubt. One of the largest differences between successful people and unsuccessful people that I've discerned, whether it be in health, school, business, or just life in general, is that successful people are determined to make a situation work for them rather than play the role of a victim or search for all of these reasons why things just simply won't work out. And so I know somebody on the other side is saying, wait a minute, Stephen. So are you saying that success, and whatever success looks like for you, isn't determined by intelligence or opportunity or resources? You're correct. That is exactly what I'm saying. Because sometimes, Santita, it simply boils down to belief that you, yes, you, can make things happen. And when you doubt your power, you give power to your doubt. Now, I get it. All of us have that little voice in our head that taunts us whenever we set out to achieve something. It criticizes us when life gets difficult. It beats us down when we struggle to stand up against its running commentary. And we know that we shouldn't allow self-doubt to get to us. but sometimes we just can't contain it. It'll slip past the barriers that we've set in place. We've printed out all of the affirmations that we say every morning. It's printed up in the bathroom, right there on the mirror. We got the positive thoughts that we hear from Tony Robbins and T.D. Jakes and Joel Osteen or whoever else fuels you with passion and information. But some kind of way, self-doubt will creep around all of that and beat us into submission. And what I hate about self-doubt is that it's greedy. It's like the Cookie Monster, always eating. It devours confidence, strips us of our logic and our reason, and steals happiness from our heart. And in return, all you and I are left with is fear and insecurity. And the harsh reality is that the more we focus on thinking positive in moments like these, self-doubt seemingly fights back, fights harder, and too often wins. And when this fear that fuels self-doubt grabs us, it will distort our dreams and our goals, and they'll cause them to appear as if they're unreachable. And if left unchecked, this fear and self-doubt will spread and begin questioning our knowledge and ability in everything we do. So here's my challenge to us. I want us today to stop fighting fear and self-doubt. Now, I know that sounds oxymoronic, but walk with me. I'm going somewhere. I want us to focus on understanding the root of our insecurities and take the necessary steps to address our fears. And we do that by, number one, identifying and easing our doubts. You've got to learn when that negative self-talk has gotten too loud in your head and has begun to turn the corner. And determine that you're going to give yourself a chance and you're going to transform the negatives that happen in your life into growth opportunities. Second, we got to stop listening to people who bring us down, because Santita, there's some people that are convinced that everything is impossible, and they'll poison our mind into a state of helplessness if we let them. So let's surround ourselves today with supportive and passionate people who inspire us and push us like you do to me, Santita, to be great. Then number three, we've got to recall our success. I want everybody to make a win list. Take a few minutes today and write down everything that you've ever won at, because you'll need to refer back to that list from time to time to give yourself a confidence boost and to help you when you get lost in life. Then trust yourself and love yourself, because you deserve to treat yourself better than you've been treating yourself. And the reality of the matter is you got to live with yourself until there is no more of yourself. So be kind to yourself. And then finally, give yourself permission to try again, because self-doubt will never disappear. Over time, we just get better dealing with it. Your doubts are only thoughts. They don't have to determine your destiny. Now, we all deal with vulnerability, uncertainty, and failure. But if you move forward in spite of, you'll eventually figure things out and work things out for your good. The key is having confidence in yourself, and that's going to make the difference in the outcome every time.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Why do you, just very quickly before you go, just practically speaking, what should we
Yeah,
do? Because sometimes the people who fill you with that self-doubt are the people closest to you. It can be,
yeah,
your parents, it can be your siblings, it can be your cousins, it could be your husband, it could be your wife, it could be your partner.
yeah,
I mean, it could be people who are sitting there who are with you every day and you're told to honor them, because you're in some kind of covenant relationship with these people. What are you supposed to do?
correct. You got to know your why. Your why is going to determine what you do, how you do it, and how long you do it. When you know your why, it becomes easier to distance yourself from those distractions, even from the people that you love. I love you, I appreciate you, I honor you, but my why is more important than your no or your discouraging remark. And stay committed to our purpose. Why did God create you? What did God create you to do that nobody can do like you can do better than you do? That if you don't do it, the earth realm won't be the same.
I like that. I like
When
that.
when you answer that, you'll stay committed to your purpose.
Wow. Hey, accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, and I don't care where it's coming from. I do not, because
That's it.
I mean, when Jesus was tempted, the devil looked very tempting. that's what
Very.
that's what I loved about
But he
Mel
was
Gibson's
committed to his
movie.
purpose.
Yes, Mel Gibson's movie made the devil look so fabulous. I was like, this is such a gorgeous person, but you couldn't quite make out what it was, but you knew it was enticing, right? And
Yep.
yeah, okay. Pastor Stephen Thurston, Mirror Moments, everybody. You've got to get the book because it will help you to take a cold, hard, loving, quite frankly, look at yourself and the role that you play in in your own life. I think that's the way I'll put it.
Yeah.
What you need to look at yourself, look, and not just put on some makeup like I do every single day, but really to look at your real face.
Your naked self.
Yeah, your naked self. As my grandmother would say, God rest her soul, not your fake face. I want your real face. Oh. Pastor Stephen Thurston, everybody. Pastor Stephen Thurston II. I urge you to get his book, Mirror Moments. You will not be disappointed. You will not be let down. It is a fabulous book, and it is a great learning tool, something that will bless your life. It certainly has blessed mine. I love you, Pastor Thurston.
Love you too. I appreciate you, Santita.
Oh, I appreciate you. When you're going to be preaching at Salem again?
This Sunday
Okay.
at 11 o'clock Central Standard Time.
All right, all right. How can we see it?
You can go to salemchicago.org and catch the link, the live stream link there. Our YouTube page, the official Salem Baptist Church of Chicago. Facebook page, the official Baptist Church, Salem, the official Salem Baptist Church of Chicago. The official Salem Baptist Church of Chicago. It'll pop up. Just put in House of Hope Salem. Yeah, all of that will pop up on the internet,
Look,
and you can catch us there.
I just want to be precise because that's important. That is
Thank you.
important. Blessings
I
too.
appreciate it.
And you don't want to miss it, everybody, because he is a preaching machine, just like his father and grandfather before him. Love you, Pastor Thurston.
Love you too. I'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. We've got some questions about COVID-19 and about where we are. Things are moving so quickly. It seems that it was just a year ago that we were locked down trying to figure out when we were to come back up. And now we are getting vaccinated. We are doing things to increase our health, some of us, and we're going out. And the infection rate is, some people are calling it a surge, other people are not calling it a surge. But there's a lot going on as we reopen. Joining Dr. Deborah Verholzen at the bottom of the hour will be Dr. Shanina Knighton, um, infection prevention specialist. She is a nurse. She is a PhD. She's from Case Western University. And of course, Dr. Deborah Verholden, world renowned epidemiologist. She is from Johns Hopkins, but she's at the Michigan State University, helping them to pull together a school of public health. She's their associate dean. Welcome to the show. Welcome home, Dr. Deborah Verholden. How you doing?
Hey, good morning, Santita.
You know what? I have a question for you before we bring on Dr. Knighton, because there is things are moving very, 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 very quickly, and I was just looking at the game as we're having these opening day games in baseball, and down in Texas, many people they went into the stadium masked, but once they got to the seats and started eating their hot dogs and and having their refreshments, they took the masks off. And as the cameras panned to the station, people did not put the cameras, they did not put the masks back on, and they had a sold out crowd. What do you make of that? I mean, and it was
Well, of
outdoors.
course, it's the same, but even still.
Okay.
And you got to think, what are people doing at the game? What do you do at the game? You don't sit at the game and mumble. You don't sit at the game and whisper. When you're at the game, you going rah, rah, rah. People are yelling. People are getting excited. They're getting pumped up. They're tapping their neighbor. They're talking to their neighbor. There's no way to do this and to do it safe. It's no way. And so here's what I do want to tell people. As you know, and I said, people going to think I'm Miss Cleo or something because I can't call these things. Let me tell you what's about to happen. We've officially lost the race. Okay? We lost the race. And the race is the variants versus the vaccine. We have lost that race. And the reason spread, I believe, is actually so high. It's a combination of factors that all came together at the same time. A combination, right? You've got the variants. You've got vaccines not rolling out fast enough. You've got mass reopening. And now we've just had Easter and spring break basically coincide. I just got the information yesterday from my colleague 3/4 of our cases among students at my university are variant cases. Did you hear what I say? 3/4. I got that information 2 weeks ago, and I was told it was 1/3. Yesterday, I talked to the person who actually runs the testing. He said, no, it's 3/4. It was 1/3 a while ago. It's 3/4. I said, 3/4? 3/4. Now, mind you, let me tell you about students. Students are very, they have social groups, right? So it would stand to reason that if a student gets whatever strain the student gets, that's the strain that they're going to pass on to their buddies, right? Because they're, very social. They're hanging out in apartment buildings and apartments, and I can't even say dorms because our students are not in the dorms. Remember, we pivoted and decided not to reopen about a week before school started. So they just descended on the city and live in non-university housing. But what students are also are vectors. Students are the ones who interact a lot with each other, but they reside in the community. So they go to the grocery store, the big box store, local restaurants, bars, the game, all of that kind of stuff. And I believe that what we're seeing in the student population is going to be an early prediction of what we can expect to see in community.
Wow.
I believe that.
Wow.
I believe that. We've done this in the past. When we wanted to know what drugs would be emerging in the community, you know who we tested? Arrestees.
Arrestees.
Arrestees. Okay. Arrestees. Right? People who were getting arrested, we would do urine toxicology on them. And it was the best predictor to this day that we had of emerging drug trends in community. It was called the Drug Use Forecasting System, the DUF. I believe that the student population, in places where you have students, will be a strong predictor for us of what we can expect to see in the community.
But hold on.
And so
when we come back, we're going to be joined by Dr. Shanina Knighton, your dear friend, this gift that you brought to this show. She's an infection prevention specialist. Because now that we're in this, we need to figure that out. Because you know what? The CDC, your people say that we need to end the hygiene theater. What does that mean? No more cleaning robots, no more sanitizing robots, no more, they say, put away the bottles of Clorox. They said, let's get rid of all of that. You don't need all of that anymore. Do you agree? Let's talk about it on the Santita Jackson Show at the top of the hour. We're going to be talking about the Chauvin trial right here on WCPT 820 and AM 950 Radio, Minneapolis, St. Paul.
Hi, everyone. It's
okay, in the
2:19.
hygiene theater.
This is Chicago's Progressive Talk, 820 AM, WCPT.
How you doing, girl?
And online at WCPT.
I'm telling you, look, I keep trying to ask you every day, what am I looking at?
Dr. Knighton's here.
Okay, we've got Dr. Knighton, Dr. Shanina Knighton. How you doing, Shanina?
5 p.m.
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. We've got Dr. Deborah Furholden on with you. Dr. Deb and Dr. Shanina.
Hey, Dr. Deb.
Intimate
Hey, Dr. Deb.
Okay, can you bring that down, Dylan?
5 p.m. till sunset. 7:50 a.m.
What's the other guy's name? He's really good. What's the other guy's name?
Oh,
there's two of them.
You talking about Paul and Devin?
If you're worried your friend may be struggling, remember,
you
don't have to be there to be
Well, this
there.
is Dylan today.
Yeah.
And they're all wonderful. Dylan is a young man who came out of Northwestern University, bless his heart, and he does so many things, and he's been pulled into becoming a board operator, and so he's had to learn on the job, and he's done a wonderful job doing that. That having been said, we have a lot to talk about with COVID-19. Because, look, last week, Deborah,
You are listening to
Shanina,
WCPT
I've got whiplash.
820.
Dr. Deb,
Here's
Dr.
the
Shanina,
latest
I've got
Chicago
whiplash.
traffic update.
Last week I saw
Yeah.
Dr. Walensky
Still having some issues
giving
this
us
morning on
tears.
8094.
And
If
I'm,
you're heading
look,
eastbound,
I'm not
it's
trying to be
closed
snarky.
between
Maybe I
Ripley and
was,
Indiana
but
Toll Road.
she
That's
was
closed
very
due to a
upset
crash
on
involving
camera
two trucks. And
about,
also
she
on
said,
the
I'm coming to you
Stevenson
not as the head
inbound
of the
at Dan
CDC,
Ryan,
but
that
I'm a
ramp from
wife,
the
I'm a
inbound
mother.
Stevenson
I see
to the
impending
inbound Dan
doom.
Ryan.
Wow,
A little
that's a
heavy
whole
with
lot
the
for a
ongoing
scientist to
construction.
say.
Also, the northbound
Okay, so
Tri-State
she
at
goes
the
from that
Eisenhower, that
to
ramp to the outbound Ike
a few
continues to
days
be a
later,
little
just a few,
sluggish
like 2 or
as
3 days
well.
later.
In Addison,
If you've
Bell
been
Road at
fully
Army Trail
vaccinated,
Boulevard,
you can
there's
be
a
around other
report of a
people who are
crash,
fully
and keep in
vaccinated,
mind
unmasked
there is
for
bridge
Easter.
maintenance this
Then
morning
that
on
afternoon, the
Cermak over
CDC
the
came
Chicago
out
River.
and walked
Continues
back
from
those
9:30
comments.
a.m.
So
to
now they're
2:30
telling us that we can
p.m.
end the
and
hygiene
that will
theater, Dr.
continue
Shanina
this
Knighton.
morning.
You don't
Again at
need any
9:30
sanitizing
on
robots.
Cermak
Put
over
away
the
all that
Chicago River.
Clorox
It's
and all of
closed.
that.
That's traffic. I'm
So I
Paul
want
Boyd.
you all to speak to that, and I'm just going to sit
The
back and
family
listen.
meeting.
So look, man, this is where we
Because
are,
I
man.
want you to
I
know
remember this when your
I
boy
am
Obama was elected. He
thoroughly
walked
through.
in, he had both
My
chambers
mama
and the
made
White
those
House.
masks for us last year, and I
And
still have
went
mine.
about the
And
business
I
of trying
told
to
you
make
they're like
friends. You
mattresses on
should
our
make that effort,
faces.
but absent
But
a
I think they
response that
work.
is acceptable,
And I
you
still have
steamroll.
lots and lots
Yeah,
of bottles of
steamroll.
Clorox. My mother just went to
The
Costco and got
family
me a
meeting.
because
Sundays
they're
4 to 6
limiting
p.m.
your
is sponsored by
purchases
Identity
of
Guard.
Clorox.
Protect your
And she
identity
went and got
for
me,
as little as
the
60
three.
Oh,
bucks per
wow.
month.
Oh
Visit
yeah, she went and got me
lookaftermyid.com.
she
According to
bought
the
a.
National
She went
Institutes
to
of
another
Health,
Costco.
30%
So she
of
got.
hospital admissions in
God
older
bless you. She
adults are
got one,
drug-related.
the
Like
three,
taking meds at the
the
wrong
three
time.
jug
Hero
container.
Health simplifies
She bought one for
medication
me
management.
and
The
one for
smart
herself.
device stores up to 90
My mother
days
is
worth
like
of
a
up to 10
survivalist. If
different
you go in their
pills. It
basement,
dispenses
they have
them at the
these
push of a
different
button.
rooms in the
Try Hero
basement. My mom's
risk-free
got
for 30
water,
days and get free contactless
Clorox.
delivery. Just call 800
She got it all.
It's called being a
420
smart
That's
woman.
800
Oh yeah, she's always done that. She's always done that. She's always done that. She said, "Look, if something happens,
Hero,
your father and I
medication
are gonna be
managed.
okay.
The Executive
You all
Service
won't
Corps, or
be
ESC, is
because
a
you didn't
nonprofit
So
listen."
you hear that?
organization with a mission to
But
help
you hear
other
that? She
nonprofits
said, stay
successfully
ready so
succeed.
you ain't got to get ready.
Did you hear what I'm saying?
Coaching,
Come on, girl.
professional services,
Yeah.
She said, "I
Yes.
am ready.
nonprofit
I don't need to get ready."
organizations helping
That's what my
1.2
mother
million
says that
people
all the
each
time.
year.
She said,
They'll
"Look, I'm ready."
facilitate board retreats,
She said,
provide
"Your father
high-level
and I are
mentoring,
okay,"
manage
and my
volunteer
father
efforts,
said that
whatever
too.
you need to make
Your
your
mother and I
nonprofit
doing just
successful.
fine.
To join
How you all
ESC or
doing?
get ESC's help with your mission, visit execservicecorps.org.
Jackie,
Look, you say,
Service,
girl, they are hilarious. My parents have been married almost 60
Hey,
years.
Dad,
Okay.
your prescription will be ready in
that's
just a minute.
beautiful.
Hey, Dad, your
You know
laundry
what?
will be ready in
It
just a
really
minute.
is. After it's
Dad,
all
your
said and
lunch will
done,
be ready
it really
in just
is.
a minute.
It's a
Hey,
blessing.
honey,
You know, I don't.
why don't you take a
Been
minute?
very blessed. I've
When you
not
help
had
care for a
to.
loved one,
I've had to
you give them
worry
as
if
much time as you can.
my father was
But
going to be
it's just
alive
as
for the
important to
holidays,
take
but I
time
didn't
for
worry that he
yourself.
wouldn't be there.
AARP.
You know,
Find free
that's
care
a big
guides to
big
support
deal.
you and your
Mhm.
loved
It's a
one
big
at
deal.
No, that is. It really is. So that's
Yeah, I mean, I can look back now, and during, when I was in college,
WCPT
boy, you had to come
Chicago's
home
progressive
directly
talk,
home for the
where
holidays.
facts
And you were like,
matter.
what? We want to stop with our friends.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey, everybody. Ooh. Santita Jackson Show, WCPT 820 in Chicago and AM 950 Radio, Minneapolis, St. Paul. Of course, at the top of the hour, we will be talking about the Chauvin case, and we will also talk about the infrastructure bill with John Nichols from The Nation magazine. But first up, let's talk about COVID-19. End the hygiene theater. That is from the Centers for Disease Control. They're saying that it's time to unplug the sanitizing robots and put away the bottles and Clorox that seem to line the entrances to every school, restaurant, supermarket, and home, everybody. Now, what do you think about that? The new CDC guidance says, quote, "It is possible for people to be infected through contact with contaminated surfaces or objects, but the risk is generally considered to be quite low." Estimating that the chance of contracting the coronavirus through surface transmission is lower than 1 in 10,000. Now, you know what? That is not what we've been hearing and feeling over the past year. What's happened? I mean, have we just given up? I don't know. I mean, I've been on a roller coaster ride, CDC, with you for the past week. At the beginning of last week, you told me that if we were fully vaccinated, we would be able to be with our friends and family who are completely vaccinated, and then without masks. And then the CDC walked it back that afternoon. I mean, we're going back and forth. And now we find out that Walgreens is not following the U.S. guidelines on Pfizer vaccine spacing. Instead of, you're supposed to get your 2 weeks, your 2 doses 3 weeks apart, they've been separating them by 4 weeks. There's a lot going on here. There's a lot of improvising. That's what they said in the Georgia, in the murder trial of George Floyd. A lot of improvising. Dr. Shanina Knighton, Ooh, infection prevention specialist, PhD, from Case Western Reserve University, from their School of Nursing, and of course, a world renowned epidemiologist, Dr. Deborah Holden, Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University, coming straight out of Johns Hopkins. Okay, in the hygiene theater, this seems like this is your basket, Dr. Knighton. The hygiene theater? What does that mean?
Yeah. So it's very interesting, okay? Because everything comes with its catch-22, and I think that is our problem. We've heard that saying of like too much of anything could be a bad thing, and of course, if we just kind of like just ignore what it is we were doing, then that could be bad too. So it's interesting because I do feel that some of the guidelines and rules that are coming into place, I do question whether or not some of them are scientifically based, to be honest. Um, I do understand that when we're talking about rolling back disinfectants and rolling back bleaches, maybe the cleaning schedules, maybe they've been a little bit intense of where somebody has been doing them, every so many hours, so maybe that is something that can be scaled back. But I do think that when we talk about stopping, what unintended consequences are we having? So when we're looking at the fact that the flu numbers were low, when we're looking at the fact that some other, illnesses were low, I've heard people say, hey, I really didn't get that much sick this year from a common cold. And don't get me wrong, COVID was still there. So it was almost like COVID replaced everything. But the thing is we've been cleaning better. People have been made to stay home when they've been sick. So anytime you call your employer and they're doing these screening measures, it's the first time where your employer wanted you to stay home because you were sick. Not saying we don't care if you're sick, you need to come in here anyway because we have work to get done. So I say that it's definitely been a culture shift. We have had it to where I can guarantee some of these offices that people work in were not being cleaned on a regular basis, even though these individuals work together within close proximity. So I am concerned about rolling back all of those measures and saying, oh, these places don't have to be clean. When we are thinking about a subway who may touch hundreds and thousands of people a day, depending on the city that you're in, those are individuals that will be touching those surfaces. And if we have been told that COVID can live on surfaces for days, just like other germs can live on surfaces for days, are we doing more harm than good by rolling back these measures? Now, we also have to think about the reverse side of that too, meaning that there is a such thing of where we can make everything so clean to where we do end up building up a resistance for fungus, for bacteria, and for viruses. So we have to create a balance. Because it can be a such thing of where if our natural immune system isn't able to build up resistance against certain germs that we may encounter in our regular environment, then that does put us at risk. And I know all of us remember, when they used to say, oh, let the baby play in the dirt or let that baby get a little bit dirty so that way they can build up their immune system. Well, that still holds true just for humans just in general. Now, just like with everything else, when they're saying roll back infection prevention, oh, do we really need tests? Do we really need this? Oh, get together because we can have fun now. The strains have not stopped mutating. They are still testing the strains with the vaccines. We also don't know how long the vaccines are going to be effective for in your body. We're also talking about the fact that, look at it, if we're talking about literally making something available to the majority of the country to be able to take, and we're just on first and second doses or first doses depending on the vaccine, can you imagine what that looks like should a booster be needed, or should we discover that the vaccine is only going to be good for 9 months or it's only going to be good for 10 months? You have all of these individuals that have now returned back to normal life. They're not being given any infection prevention guidelines, and yet they're returning back to regular life. And it's the possibility of, are they then going to spread that more resistant strain? Or is it a situation then of where we are Now, digressing back in terms of how much progress was made, like, are we going in the reverse direction? The other piece too that I want to bring up, because you're talking about disinfectants, many people don't even use disinfectants appropriately. So there is something on the back of the bottles that are called contact time. If your disinfectant is not making the appropriate amount of contact time with surfaces, you are overusing and wasting disinfectant, or the disinfectant is not working like it should. You may actually see on there where it says the contact time or where it needs to be on the surface is 2 minutes. Likely some of them range between 15 seconds and 10 minutes. But if yours say 2 minutes and you're not leaving it sitting on there for 2 minutes and it's not making appropriate contact time, then it's not killing those 99% of the germs that it says it's going to kill on the bottle.
And most of us don't do that. You know, we spray and wipe.
Yeah, we spray and wipe, but spray and wipe is not necessarily the best way. And the other piece of that is I've seen, and I'm sure you all have seen this at the grocery stores and just out in public, that one cashier that has like the same rag. So she uses the same rag on the same surface multiple times without switching the rag, without washing out the rag. And at some point, if you're not spraying a lot of disinfectant on there, you're just saturating germs circulating in the rag that you're now just spreading right back on the surface.
773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. You can text me at that number. Thank you, GWC Injury Lawyers. How are you cleaning? Oh, no, everybody. While we are opening back up, COVID is still here. The coronavirus is still here, and people are still getting COVID-19. It's still something you do not want. You don't want it. And are we doing all that we can to protect ourselves? And do we even know how? Dr. Deborah Verholten, I think that's why you really wanted Dr. Knighton here. You said, you know what? We don't even know what we don't know. Before we go back to Dr. Knighton, Dr. Verholten, we don't know what we don't know about protecting ourselves,
Well, but
about preventing infection.
This is true, but we do know what we do know.
Okay.
And there's a lot that we don't quite know and the nuances that we don't understand. But if people would really practice what they do know to the best of their ability, I think it would make a difference. One of my really good colleagues in Flint says, just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed here when things reopened, everybody flooded the restaurants. You know, a lot of people, summertime is coming. A lot of people flooded the gym. They want to get those summer bodies back. You know, a lot of people have, you know, for different reasons. And truly, I have no judgment. But I'm in Michigan. If you look at a map, Michigan is bright, hot red right now. We have the highest increase in COVID cases and the greatest number of cases relative to our population. And I've already told people what we have here, and this was known weeks ago. We had the highest number of B117 variant cases. That's what people call the UK variant. All those numbers are just where on the little genetic code the mutations happen. So there's nothing fancy about B117. It's just the way to identify it. Like she's Shanina, you're Santita, I'm Deborah. This is the B117, you know, variant of COVID. And that variant spreads more easily and it causes people to get sicker. So we got a new sheriff in town and he's a Johnny Bad Boy. So people's got to honor these protocols.
Well, then let me ask you
and
this.
Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should.
Well, where are these variants coming from? I mean, because, you know, now they're, you know, because I see a line being drawn between those who've been vaccinated and those who've not been vaccinated. And I don't think that's fair. And it's not just because I've not been vaccinated yet. Just, I'm not anti-vax. I'm just waiting for them to work out some of the kinks. That's what I'm doing. And I had a life-saving surgery, everybody, about 17 years ago almost. And so there's some health concerns that I have. And there is a strengthening of my body that I'm really engaged in actively right now, so that I can be okay no matter what happens. That's a real thing. That's a real thing for me, Dr. Knighton and Dr. Verholten. I am like, wait a minute, because I can just be upfront with you all. I almost died 17 years ago, and I am grateful that I'm still here. So there's some things that I'm watching in my own body,
Mhm.
and that's it. I want to be stronger, and I've been strong. I mean, this is like I've not had any respiratory infections in a year. This is a great thing for me. Really great thing.
Mm.
Oh yeah, that's a
That's
big
awesome.
that's a big deal. And I know a lot of other people who otherwise have been healthier. That having been said, there are things that we need to do while we are getting out here. Okay, because I have friends who are now beginning to have little get-togethers of 10, 15, 20, 30 people. I have friends who are now going out to eat together unmasked because they've been vaccinated. And I just want to know, Dr. Knighton, what should we be doing? Because
So
I'm
so
reading these stories now, and I'm beginning to get a little anxious. So I'm like, wait a minute,
gotcha.
are we
So what?
careless?
Right. So the thing I will tell you is this, and this is why I always prevent, or I always say that prevention is better than treatment. And the other piece of that being, it's important for us to also think about how can I adapt to life like currently as it is without compromising my happiness, you know? And when I say that, of course, the value of life is important. Individuals, we're social beings. So we want to interact and we want to be around other individuals. The thing is how do we do it safely? And so I am thankful that we are embarking upon summer weather. However, I am concerned as we're going to swing back again into the fall when people want to start going back indoors with these behaviors. So I can tell you, Santita, and Dr. Deb probably knows this too, but the chances of catching COVID while being outside is slim to none. And if you think about it, when all of the protests and stuff was even going on last summer, the surges didn't come from the protests with people being outside. We actually used the outside air to do air exchanges with inside air inside of hospitals and inside of buildings because many people are not talking about the HVAC systems. So when we are looking at these surges, a lot of these surges, when we're talking about heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems, us knowing that aerosols exist, I can think about some old elevators where somebody probably didn't got on cough, left those aerosols in the air. The elevator is one of those ones that close real fast, and then somebody else possibly got on and caught COVID. So it's that type of situation of being inside and being in enclosed spaces that will increase the chances of someone being able to get it. Now, some of the advice that I gave, even in the fall and even for the holidays, is if you are going to entertain, try to entertain outside. Try to plan gatherings where you're going to be sitting outside so you can sit in an open, ventilated space, even if you do decide to have your mask off. And that is even too, like in the state of Ohio, one of the rules that the governor had is that if you are able to socially distance while being outside, then you don't need a mask. It's just that I do know that some individuals choose to wear it outside and wear it inside too. But there are, to our knowledge, no studies that show that being outside has caused someone to get COVID. It is in enclosed spaces, it's poor ventilation, it's being around crowds of people, it's touching the same thing. Because that's another thing. Just because you're outside at a cookout, right? So let's say people are outside for Easter, if everybody is going down the assembly line and they're all hovering over the food and everybody's touching the spoons as they're going down and everyone's not practicing proper sanitation, you've picked up someone's germs because you're likely not going to clean your hands before you start eating your food on your plate. Like, I've seen a lot of people not do it, and we know that only 3 to 6% of people clean their hands correctly. So it's not a matter of us staying closed in. It's about us paying attention to our behaviors. Like, if you know things are getting crowded in a certain space, then maybe that's your time to say, you know what, I'll catch y'all later, or I'm getting ready to make sure that I put on my mask and make sure that I'm vigilant. I'm very strong about my hand hygiene and making sure that I'm doing it correctly and trying to socially distance as much as possible. When we're going back, to these social settings, are you touching the same elevator buttons? Are you touching the same rails as people are going up the escalators? So CDC is talking about rolling back some of these disinfection practices. You should definitely be paying attention to commonly touched surfaces. That is something that is so essential right now. And then just one last thing, Santita, because you mentioned the restaurants, right? So not just thinking about restaurants, but also thinking about fast food. It is important, and I'm going to tell you all about a little experience that I had with my children not too long ago. So I ended up taking them to a fast food restaurant, and as we were going through the drive-through line, the cashier has on gloves, okay? And I've watched this cashier now a couple of instances before me where I know he didn't have time to change these gloves. So this individual is handling plastic. So he's handling all of our cards, and we know COVID loves plastic, but he's also the person that's handling our drinks as well. And so when you think about the process of making one of those drinks in those plastic cups, I watched him not only put the ice in there, he literally had 3 cups, and he took those gloves and he threed. You know how we would get the juice for kids, like when we were filling up cups and you might have like stuck your hand at the top? He stuck those gloves at the top of the cup, and he then carried it over to go get the juice, right? And then after he carried it over to go get the juice with those gloves on, he then had to put the lid on it. So now you've taken a palm of all of the germs that are on that glove, and you've now placed it on the top of my lid for my beverage that you're going to pass out the window to me to consume along with the card that I just gave you. And so when I bring this up, because these are things that we don't pay attention to. So again, when I'm talking about, oh, my stomach is hurting, when I'm not feeling right, how did I possibly get COVID? These are things that individuals are not considering. And so rightfully so, I did speak to a manager. I also asked them to change the gloves. Hand hygiene should occur in between glove use. So a lot of these practices that you're even starting to see some of these businesses do, they potentially, you know, in addition to what Dr. Deb mentioned, and us possibly seeing these surgeons with college kids, these could be the surgeons as well that we're not paying attention to because they don't have anyone that's governing how they're handling food. And I also, too, with condiments, condiments should not be placed directly on your French fries in your bag. Your cream cheese packet should not be placed next to your bagel. That cream cheese was sitting in the refrigerator before it made it inside of your bag. And I've been told they drop on the floor. We've worked in fast food too. So those packets not being the actual food may drop on the floor, and now somebody sat it directly next to your food in the bag. So it's important for us to make sure that they don't sit those items next to our food or on our food.
We're not thinking about that. Oh my gosh, we're not thinking about that. I mean, and but also we're not being told that. I think that in addition to that, I think that's part of the challenge that I have with the whole discussion about the vaccines. And I appreciate Mr. Frazier, the CEO of Merck, who last year said that we're not being well served by being told that the vaccine is a silver bullet. There are a lot of things that we need to be doing to keep ourselves safe. Quite frankly, we should have been doing it before COVID, but we did not, right? There are a lot of things
Yes,
that we need to do to protect ourselves going forward, in or out of a pandemic, Dr. Knighton.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. And I know you didn't touch on it too much, but one of the things, for example, you know, that we make sure that we do is we're making sure that we're taking my family, taking foods and things to boost our immune system, you know, and specifically our T cells. Like they're actually doing T cell boosters inside of the vaccines to be able to build up our immune systems inside of the vaccines. But I tell individuals, whether you choose to take the vaccine or not, you should be more conscious of what you're putting in your body, like absolutely 100%. And you brought up respiratory infections. And so one of the things that we know is a good anti-inflammatory is ginger. I will tell you, I juice ginger and lemon for my family every single week. My son, he's involved in football. So because I know he's going to be around others, I make sure, of course, that he's doing proper protocol by talking to him. But he has to take lemon and ginger every single day. And it's no ifs, ands, buts about it. And I can tell you, like, that has helped with his allergies. So there are things out here that we can do to naturally boost our immune system. And just as you mentioned that they're not teaching us enough about infection prevention, in regards to what physical things we can do. We're also not being talked to about the things that we're putting in our body that is lowering our immune system, and we're not talking about things that we can put in our body to improve our immune system. And I think until we start looking at this thing as a holistic picture, and that we stop treating vaccines, stop treating drugs as the end all be all, meaning that we need to stop looking for a fix and start working on fixing ourselves. We know that some of the things that we put in our body is harmful, and it's not meaning, oh, we're going to all go clean and all go vegan tomorrow and all going to eat plant-based diets or, vegetarian diets. It's not that. It's just saying, what can I cut out of my diet that I know for sure is causing me to have some inflammation? It's causing me to have some mucus buildup. What is it that I can do to be better to my body? And I think that these are questions that we also need to ask, because guess what? Let's say maybe we're getting lucky with these vaccines and maybe they will work against these extra strains. But for whatever reason, if they don't, or if there is the next pandemic with another virus or another bacteria, it comes down to, are you going to be ready, or are you going to be scrambling to get ready? And the thing is when you keep your body ready, your body never knows when it's getting ready to encounter one of these bugs. But at least you'll have a better chance of being able to fight it off if you're taking care of yourself. So when I say prevention is better than treatment, preventing diabetes is going to be better than having to treat diabetes. Preventing a gunshot is going to be better than having to treat the wound. Preventing weight gain is going to be easier than trying to get the weight off. And trust me, I know that because I'm in the gym still always trying to maintain as well and, lose. This is something that a lot of people end up dealing with just in general. And so you want to prevent these things so you don't have to get there, and I think that is the message that is missing when we're talking about public health, when we're talking about what can we help the public do.
When you come back, and I'm claiming you now in the next few days, want to talk about the foods that we need to eat to boost our T cell counts, the foods that we ought not be eating, and because my mother juices lemon and ginger, so you know what, I do it too. And she gave me a big old chunk that looked like a tree when I was by there a couple of days. you know she's my mother's like that. She's not huggy huggy kissy kissy, but she says I show my love in other ways. I give you these things.
Oh,
Oh yeah. And so I appreciate that. I do. And so, Dr. Deb, I have about 30 seconds. You brought this gift to us because you've been so conscientious. What do you want us to see? What do you want us to know before we go?
Well, I think Dr. Knighton has hit the nail on the head. We got the tools, use them. These tools are only, and this knowledge is only going to be as good as we put it into practice. And I really, really want us to have a much better summer than we did in 2020. And what we're doing right now is setting the stage and determining what summer looks like. So,
Well, you know what? I'm going to have you back in the next few days. Of course, Dr. Deborah Verholden will be back with us tomorrow morning. But Dr. Knighton, let me know when your schedule frees up in the next few days, because we need to do that. We need to have that discussion about the foods that we eat. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of what? Cure. Wow. Derek Chauvin, what is going on with that case? What did you make of the chief of police and his testimony yesterday? And what about the testimony of the man who was in the car with George Floyd today? He said he's pleading the fifth. What's up with that? Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a moment.
This is Ricky Rubio.
You all are just the best, the best, the best, the best, the best. Thank you so much, Dr. Knighton. Let me know when you can come back on with Dr. I was about to say Dr. Verholden and I. I'm trying to do a couple of things at once.
Don't have a paid
I
job.
do. I would not
Even though
recommend
companies
that.
that employ
But,
people with differences
let
report
me know when
better
you can come
morale
back
so
on.
it's
and higher
actually,
productivity.
yeah,
There are
mornings for
6.5
me right
million
now.
people in
So
the
it's
US
actually
with
just switched because I'm on the hook for taking the kids and picking the kids up from school in the afternoon.
And now,
And my
thanks to
husband on the hook for
President's
taking them in the
Feast,
morning. So I should be
and
good.
Special Olympics,
I actually
there
should
has
be good
never
this
been
week
more
every
opportunity
day in
to
the morning
learn
around this
practices
time.
I got
build a
we got
more
she and I
inclusive
claim you
workforce.
Thursday and Friday.
Join
Boom.
me
Done.
Okay. All right. Thursday and Friday it is.
This is what we need to know. I mean it because I don't want Deborah to get Dr. Deborah to get too frustrated with me because every time I ask her a question, she's like, Santita. I've answered this question 50 times. I feel like I said, pretend like you're talking to your children, Dr.
For a
Deb.
home loan to fit your budget and your family?
Would you?
Rocket can. This update brought
She's
to you
been
by
so
Rocket
faithful.
But
Can.
I get it. Look, and I was sitting up there listening to her talk about the college students. I was like, I said, oh my God. I said, if this ain't the truth.
Capacity crowd since the coronavirus
Yeah,
shut
this is
down
where
more
we
than
are.
a year ago. More than
It is. And I'm
38,000
actually
fans
vaccinating.
filed
So
into
I'm
Globe
vaccinating
Life
on campus
Field in
now. I was
Texas.
vaccinating
A
in the
sellout
community, but
game
now
which
I'm
the
vaccinating
Texas
on
Rangers
campus.
lost
You
to
better.
Toronto.
How about
Masks
that?
were
I'll let
required,
you two
and our
ladies
reporter
go
says a
because I'm
lot
going
of
to bring
people
these
were
other people
wearing masks
in.
as the
But
game
we'll
began.
have you
But
Thursday and
more
Friday.
and more
Dr. Deb, I'll
fans
see you
dumped the
in the
masks
morning.
as the game went on. The number of
I love
coronavirus
y'all.
infections is
I got
rising
to
in
make
this
a shift
country,
over to this
and
Chauvin
CDC
trial
Director
now.
Dr. Rochelle Walensky says many of those cases.
CK wanted me to call her back in a minute, so I am.
Okay, very good. Attorney Hoffman and Attorney Patillo.
And extracurricular activities. According to CDC guidance, these activities should be limited.
Joyce.
Patillo's on, but he might have stepped away.
He's
there.
Says the
How you
Minneapolis
doing?
police
Can
chief
you bring
testified
the radio
yesterday
down for
in
me?
the trial of the officer he fired.
Attorney
Derek
Patillo?
Chauvin.
Chief Madaria Arundel.
Good morning.
On day
Great.
6 of the trial,
Dylan, I
says
need
on
you to bring him up
TV,
just a bit.
Sanctity of life is absolutely vital. That is the pillar.
He's at the same level, so let me ask him to speak
Okay.
closer to his phone.
Whatever you need to do to make that
continuing to
adjustment,
kneel
please
on
do.
George Floyd's neck once Floyd was
Okay,
handcuffed
Joyce.
and lying prone on
Okay.
his stomach, exhibiting
It's a little
departmental
bit better. It
policy
sounds
or
like you're in a bit of a
training
can,
or
though.
ethics or values. The defense maintains illegal
No,
drug use.
can you hear me better now?
Now it's better.
Health
Yes.
conditions are what caused
Well,
Okay.
to hear you as well as they
I'm
can.
Jackie Quinn.
Joyce wanted
Baylor
to know.
has won the
and good
NCAA
morning, Robert
championship,
Patillo.
its first national
We've enjoyed
championship
having
in
you.
men's
Good morning, you all,
basketball, dealing
Absolutely.
Gonzaga its
Joyce
only
thank you so
loss
much.
of the
Oh,
season.
thank you, sweetie.
86
Joyce wants to know
70.
how my
The AP
therapy
has
with
learned
my
that Major
father
League Baseball will
has
move the
gone.
All-Star game
In fact,
to
I've got to
Denver,
hop off
dumping Atlanta
today
over
as soon as we're
objections to
done.
changes in
So I'm going to
Georgia's
go.
voting laws.
He's put
That's
me in his
according to a
schedule
person
now
familiar with the
because I
decision.
went with
This
him
is
to
AP
therapy
News.
yesterday, and his therapist Robert
The
said that
Norwegian cruise
whatever I
line
did
is
on
asking to be
Saturday
allowed to resume trips
helped him
from U.S.
tremendously.
ports on July 4th.
I said,
The
okay. So
CDC
I
has
said I have to
blocked
push him. I
cruise
said
ships
because
from
as a
US
concert
ports since
singer
last
myself, I
spring,
said,
but
Attorney Hoffman.
Dad,
plan
you
to
are. Thank
allow
you
them
so much.
back in
I was
without
telling
specifying
CK, how
when.
you doing?
In a letter to CDC Chief Rochelle
Good morning.
Walensky,
Hey, I
Norwegian
need you.
Cruise
I
Line
need you to
Holdings
come up
says
just
it
a little bit
wants
because
to
you
start
sound like you're in a
US
bit of a
sailing
can.
again at
Look, can you keep
60% of
speaking?
Is this
capacity.
better?
That's
I'm
better.
gonna.
That's
Yeah,
better.
can you hear me?
Yeah,
Okay, I was
that's
gonna
much,
increase the
much
volume.
better. Oh, that's
Require
perfect.
passengers and crew to
But
be
I'm
fully
helping my father with
vaccinated
his
against
therapy. I've got to hop
COVID-19
off at
at
8 so
least
that I can
2
go
weeks before
meet him
sailing.
over at the house
The company
and
says
do
its
his
precautions
therapy with
go
him
well
because his
beyond those
therapist
taken
is
by
the
airlines,
pathologist
hotels,
and
and
the
others in the
speech
travel and
therapist at the
leisure
rehab
industry
facility.
that have already
Said that whatever I
reopened.
did with him on
Sagar
Sunday
Meghani,
helped a whole
Washington.
lot.
The Dow hit a
I said,
record
great.
yesterday, up
I
372
told him,
Wonderful.
points to
well, you know, as a concert singer, I said, Dad, you and I
30,527.
use the
The
same
Nasdaq
mechanism.
and
I
the
just sing and
S&P
you
were up
speak.
too. I'm Rita
I said, so you
Foley,
got to
Yeah.
AP
push.
News.
I said, because, Reverend being a
This
former
is
athlete, I
8:20
said, you're a
a.m.
vocal athlete too.
WCPT Willow Springs.
And I said, that same lung capacity, I said, Frank Sinatra swam, I think,
We
like
are
2 miles a
Chicago's
day
progressive talk, where facts matter.
throughout his life, because that is how you need
Now, your
lung capacity as a
WCPT
singer. That's why
820
when you see
Chicago
singers
traffic
singing,
update.
they are a sweaty mess, or
Fuel
if
problems
you
on
don't see the sweat
8094
when they
heading
take off their
eastbound
clothes,
this
they're
morning.
wet.
It's closed between Ripley and the Indiana Toll Road, but traffic
Because
is getting by.
it's hard work. Preaching,
There's
it's
some
hard work.
delays
It's hard work.
at
So
Broadway on the
Well,
Kennedy. if
I
you're
can
heading
tell you,
eastbound.
Santita, it's just amazing. I'm just so delighted. I know you are too. So all that you all are doing is working, and it's just wonderful.
honey,
It's wonderful.
all that he is letting us do, hello, because he gets upset.
Well,
he gets in his feelings
that's-
when I remind him, I can't hear you. Hello.
Between St. Charles and North Avenue.
Yes.
Sluggish and that
But you do it with love, and that's the key. That's the key. No, you do, and he receives it with love, even when you're getting after him about it. Yeah, pushing. Yeah, but it's with love.
You're very sweet.
So that's
Because a friend of
Well, you
mine
push with
got on
love.
me. This a friend of mine called a friend of mine on me. He said, what she's doing for her father is not nice. She said, whoa, you're not living with him, honey. She said, you clearly have not lived with a parent yourself. And although I don't live with my parents, you live with your parents, right? And so she said, no. She said she's not talking about the icon. She's talking about her daddy. She knows what he sounds like. Because I grew up with him, you guys. Hello. I didn't. He's not someone who I saw occasionally. Please. I saw him just about once a week when I was in college, CK. How many people would say that? Because he had an office in Washington.
No matter where
And he would insist
you're somebody's neighbor.
that daddy's in town. Just come on by. Okay.
We show up and
And girl, when I was
when
online,
things get tough.
one of my line sisters and I went to a luncheon they were having at the Shiloh Baptist Church at their big recreation hall. We had our big bags, girl. And we waited for everybody to be finished with the buffet. Girl, we wrapped that stuff up and dumped it in our bags. And my poor father said, they're online for Delta Sigma Theta. And everybody just cracked up. Girl, we were just looking like pigs. Just, girl, we're going to eat well tonight. Because there were like 56 of us online. Yeah, we're going to eat good, really good. But you know what? This trial is getting more and more interesting. We're coming up, everybody. Stand by. Stay right here.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. I am Santita Jackson. This is WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I'm Santita. It is April 6th. 2021, Tuesday. I want you to call me or text me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. Have you been watching the trial of Derek Chauvin? It has been absolutely riveting. And while the testimony there yesterday was, the people were a little cooler. They were not, they didn't appear to be as emotional as George Floyd's friends and the people who actually witnessed his death firsthand. It was no less riveting. We got a lot of information yesterday. We're going to get even more today because we're going to hear from the man who was in the car with George Floyd when he was arrested. We still don't know what he was arrested for. So we got to talk about that today, of course, with attorneys C.K. Hoffler. She'll be talking about this later on her show on WAOK at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, 10 o'clock Central Standard Time here in Chicago. But she's down in Atlanta on WAOK. And, of course, Attorney Robert Patillo joins us. He is also on WAOK from 1 to 4 Eastern Standard Time every Sunday. You've got to listen to both of those shows. It's fantastic. Let's get to a few of these headlines as we get to this case. 77 degrees will be the high in Chicago, partly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 68 degrees. A beautiful day, but scattered thunderstorms. The Dow closed up 373 points. The S&P 500 closed up 58 points. The NASDAQ closed up 225 points yesterday. In the hygiene theater, that is what the CDC is saying. It's time to unplug the sanitizing robots and put away the bottles of Clorox that seem to line the entrances to every school, restaurant, supermarket, and wanting to advertise their safety protocols. Indeed, the new CDC guidelines say this, quote, "It is possible for people to be infected through contact with contaminated surfaces or objects, but the risk is generally considered to be low." Wow. Estimating that the chance of contracting the coronavirus through surface transmission is lower than 1 in 1,000. But everybody remain vigilant. They're not telling you not to be vigilant. Just, don't have to be paranoid. But the infection rates are rising. But, the experts are disagreeing on what to call a surge. Remember, that is happening too. Walgreens. The 2-dose vaccines are supposed to be taken 3 weeks apart. Walgreens, however, has been separating them by 4 weeks because it made it faster and simpler for the company to schedule appointments. I have to pull that because I need to ask Doctors Verholden and we're going to have Dr. Corder from Washington, D.C. with us. I want to ask about that because that is curious. What do you think, everybody? Pfizer is saying that its COVID-19 vaccine protects young teens. Wow, that's good news. Are you going to let your teen get this shot? You let me know. First thing, wow. The former police chief of the Minneapolis Police Department, Madaria Arredondo, said he vehemently disagrees that there was justification for Chauvin to keep his knee on George Floyd's neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds. So let's get right to Attorney C.K. Hoffler. president of the National Bar Association, and chair of Rainbow Push. And of course, she also has her own radio show. She'll be talking about this today at 11 o'clock Central, Eastern Standard Time today, 10 o'clock Central, on WAOK 1380 down in Atlanta. Wherever you are, all around the country, all around the world, listen to it. And every Sunday on the same station on WAOK 1380, you can hear Robert Patillo on his own show from 1 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Give me your view of yesterday. It was stunning to see this police chief, C.K. Hoffler. I mean, how many times have we seen that testify in this case? What was unique about that? And what did he say?
Well, Santita, yeah, yesterday was riveting on so many levels. Now we're accustomed to seeing evidence about what Derek Chauvin did. The fact that his actions, from my standpoint in looking at the evidence, were outside of what he should have done in terms of trying to restrain George Floyd. But now we've got law enforcement that's stepping in, and law enforcement that is taking a position on what he should have done, what he could have done, and the options that we had. And it was riveting from that standpoint, because I think as lay people, we really don't have an appreciation for all of the things, all of the training that law enforcement has. But one thing we do have an appreciation for is, no matter the training and all of that, with Derek Chauvin, this is what I saw: used excessive force. No matter what training, no matter what the protocols, no matter what was called for, he did use excessive force, which led to the death of George Floyd. We also did hear from, as you said, a lot of people who were not as emotional as we would have thought they would be. But at this point, many people have testified. Many people have seen the evidence, and the prosecution, I think, is just trying to get more of the facts. Just get more of the facts, lay the record, and the defense is trying to poke more holes into the evidence. So I think yesterday was eye-opening. It was sickening for me also, just to hear, if you want to know my candid opinion, it was sickening. There were times where I was sick to my stomach just to hear some of the information, some of the evidence, some of the training, what law enforcement should do, what they're expected to do, what didn't happen, what did happen. All of those things, for those who saw it and even for those who were just listening, were sickening. They made my stomach turn, because at issue is that someone was murdered, someone was killed, and it was for no reason. And your brother, Santita, Jonathan, said it best yesterday. George Floyd died without knowing why he was dying.
Can you imagine? He did. He was on point with that. He said, "Wait a minute. He doesn't even know what he was charged with. They just pulled him out the car, CK, and dragged him to the ground, dragged him to his death." Well, he's like, "What did I do? What did I do?"
And you know, what did he do? And the footage before, I don't know if you recall the footage that came in, some of the evidence that came in before. They had video footage of him talking to the police, kind of begging them not to be aggressive with him.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you recall that. It was that was before the chokehold and all that.
He said, "I'm claustrophobic." Phobias are a real thing. They evoke real physical reactions. They were dealing with someone who was afraid, deathly afraid of closed-in spaces. Which
well, they were also dealing with someone, a black man, who was afraid of being shot by the police.
Well, yeah,
and killed.
They were dealing with how about that?
Being in their custody, just being a black man driving, being a black man living, being a black man breathing. So there were all of those dynamics you could see on his face. Just that fear, that absolute fear.
Wow. So, I mean, Attorney Robert Patillo, what did you see yesterday? And what do you expect to see today with this gentleman who was in the car with him, who it was established last week that they bought pills from him, right? So, and he's saying that he's going to take the fifth. Whew. First, the chief of police, and and what we might see today.
Well, I think the chief of police information was very important in establishing and poking holes in one of the defense strategies. One of the defense arguments has been that this was part of Mr. Chauvin and the other officers' training, that they were within their rights as police officers, that what they were doing was what any officer would do, and that even if there was a tragic mistake, it wasn't their fault because, frankly, Mr. Floyd was so fragile and such in a weakened, drug-riddled, disease-riddled state that he would have dropped dead at that minute, whether or not they were there or not. That's been the Chauvin defense from the opening arguments. So it's important to have the police chief information to demonstrate that no, this is not police policy. This is not how Mr. Chauvin was trained. He was not operating in the coverture of his job as a police officer. Yesterday, when we talked about this, I said sometimes it's difficult to prove that a crime took place when somebody is allowed to kill people as part of their job. Well, the police chief established that Mr. Chauvin was operating outside of the protections of what his job entailed, and therefore he lost that protection to be able to use force against the individual because he was violating his training and violating department policy. So I think that's an important building block going towards the question of criminality and also going towards the question of intent. If they're still pursuing a higher degree murder charge versus a reckless or negligent murder. So I think it was an important building block because, as I said, what the prosecution has not established so far is motive and intent, and that's one brick in that story going forward. I think the testimony today is going to be interesting because, as a lawyer, you never want to put someone on the stand where you don't know what they're going to say or do. You never want to put somebody on the stand where they are telling you up front, look, I'm not going to say anything, I'm going to plead the fifth. It ruins the cadence of the presentation you're doing. It ruins the believability. You're putting on a show as a trial attorney. You can never forget that it's a legal show, but at the end of the day, it's a performance. It's no different than being on Broadway or being in a community theater. You're putting on a performance, and if you're at a Hamilton, let's say, and all of a sudden the lighting doesn't work, it takes you out of the suspension of disbelief. If you're there and the music is messing up. So it's the same thing when you have a witness who's not cooperative, who's pleading the fifth, who's fighting back and forth. So particularly during direct examination, you usually don't want to put that sort of witness on the stand. It may be that the prosecution has a certain number of questions that he will answer and that they are willing to put him on the stand to get that germane evidence from, and that he plans on pleading the fifth on cross-examination or for other information. So I think it's going to be a very interesting trial strategy to find out exactly what they think they can glean from him. And I think it also goes towards that effort to front the evidence, where they want to take the stinger out. When the defense tries to say, well, George Floyd bought pills from somebody. Well, we already told y'all he bought pills from somebody. Here's the explanation. So I think that may be the strategy for putting him on the stand, but it's definitely risky if they don't know exactly what he's going to say.
Well, he said that he's going to take the fifth. Well, how do you read that?
Well, can I just add, just as a trial lawyer, I would agree with Robert on that risk. When you have to have a witness on the stand because that witness gives you evidence, but that witness is going to be cagey, the examination must be short, sweet, and to the point. You got to cut your losses because that witness will just denigrate and destroy your case. And so I think that I imagine that this had to have been a calculated risk, that they felt that this witness was essential. I just kind of personally, and again, playing Monday morning quarterback is always very interesting when you're a trial lawyer. I just thought that was not the best strategic call. But if you have a witness like that and there's one piece of evidence that is the only witness who can give you that evidence, sometimes you got to just roll with it, but it needs to be short, sweet, to the point, get that witness off, because there's this expression that I use in the law, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. So the Lord gave something, but my goodness, there was a lot of other, cloudy stuff. And I thought that was they must have believed that they just had to have had that witness. But what they do is, you don't put a witness like that up front. You put them in the middle so that hopefully people forget all the bad stuff. But that was a calculated risk. I'm not sure it paid off, but again, I don't know the gravamen. I don't know all that they were trying to get from that witness.
is there any way to bring um, into the trial the fact that, I mean, is it relevant at all that Derek Chauvin had 18 complaints against him, and 6 of them involved chokeholds? Is it?
Well, I and that goes to pattern and practice, meaning you can't when there is, whether it's a murder trial or any trial, the court is going to be typically pretty rigid on limiting the evidence that comes into the issues in that case. You can bring in pattern and practice. You can bring in previous bad acts. That's what it's called, bad acts. You can, under certain circumstances, bring in that evidence, but it's going to be limited. And with the judge, the balancing test that the judge is going to do, and both sides will argue, is whether the probative value, meaning the value of that evidence going before the jury, outweighs the prejudicial effect. And without a question, introducing 6, 5, 10, 16, 20, or even 3 acts of bad acts that are very similar is going to have a prejudicial effect on the jury. So then the judge has to look at, what is the probative value? What does it tend to show? More likely not. What does this evidence go to? And that's a tough argument to make. So while we as lay people are saying, well, why wouldn't that be admissible? That just shows he's a bad person. He does it all the time. He did it before, and that's what he does all the time. The answer is, believe it or not necessarily so. The prosecution has to tie that behavior, and it's like taking a needle and threading it ever so delicately to the facts of this case to show that that is his, and for lack of a better word, his MO. That's how he is all the time. Not that that's how he was on those occasions, but that's how he is all the time. And that's very tough.
You know,
that's very tough.
Well, I mean, if you were, it is tough. And I think that this case, you know, many people, Robert, are saying that this is a slam dunk already for the prosecution. I feel that way too, CK. Robert, what say you?
Well, it depends on what you mean by slam dunk. Because, as I said, we still have to address the issues of intent and motive, particularly when you're pursuing one of the higher degrees of murder. So if you mean they've established that Mr. Floyd was killed by Mr. Chauvin, they absolutely have. If you mean they've established that it was outside the realm of police policy,
Wait.
They have absolutely.
Stop. Wait, have they established that he was killed by Derek Chauvin? I mean, because they're trying to say it was the fentanyl. It was the drug.
I think given the medical examiner's testimony that it was asphyxiation, that was very important because that shows that it was not simply the medical examiner said, well, the cause of death was a drug overdose, then that's very different than saying it's asphyxiation, because it's a far harder argument to make that, well, it was the drugs and not the knee to the throat when it's asphyxiation that was the cause of death. So the prosecution can still argue that, well, the reason that he was so easily asphyxiated was because of his drug-riddled and sickly state, which, of course, they will try to argue. But I do think that they've gotten over that bar, save additional information from the defense that would override that. So I will say that they have established that through the medical examiner. They have established that Mr. Chauvin violated police policy through the police chief. So that defense kind of goes out the window when the actual chief of police is saying, no, this was not police policy. But what they still have not established is, one, that that it was reckless. They've established negligence, absolutely, but negligence is an involuntary manslaughter involuntary manslaughter charge. But once you get into murder, you have to show, one, that either the activity was so reckless that it was obvious that the outcome will be the death of another. So, you know, it's one thing if you get into a motorcycle accident and kill somebody, that's a negligent homicide. It's another thing if you're driving 150 miles per hour, holding a bottle of Hennessy in your hand and kill somebody. Well, now we've moved to reckless homicide, which is a higher level of culpability because you knew what you were doing was likely to cause the death of another. But still, we have to find ways to establish intent, and you have to establish to the jury what exactly the motive would have been for Mr. Chavez to want to take Mr. Floyd's life. So that's the information we still need. So I wouldn't say we're at slam dunk yet, particularly when we haven't heard the other side of the fight.
Well, in a couple of minutes.
Can I just say?
Yeah, because are you
Can I
going to
just
be
say
talking
about
about
the
this
slam dunk
today,
there,
though?
Peter?
Okay. Yeah,
I will.
Okay.
I will. Just real quick about the slam dunk. It does not exist.
Okay.
I've been a lawyer for 34 years. There is no such thing as a slam dunk in a trial. If there were, it would never go to trial. The case would settle. There would be a plea done, case closed. Okay. No such thing as a slam dunk. And my witness is Jonathan's going to be on my show today. Your brother Jonathan Jackson, and also Ben Crump is going to be on, and one of George Floyd's family members, because Ben Crump and the family are in the courtroom, and they're going to give me the reactions of the jurors to some of this evidence from inside the courtroom. But there's no such thing as a slam dunk. I don't care how great the evidence is. You can think you're rocking and rolling with a slam dunk, and the jury's like, I don't know. That's not persuasive to me. So we have to be very, very careful. Very careful. And it's amazing. And by the way, jurors of all colors and hue and gender can look at the evidence that you think is a slam dunk. It's so strong. And they might think, not quite compelling. It doesn't get us over the hurdle of beyond a reasonable doubt. What hasn't been in the record has been anything to establish his intent. I'd like to know, how much did he know? How many times did he work with George Floyd? Did he meet the girlfriend? All of those things. That work environment, what was that like? Because I am persuaded that he knew George Floyd and he knew him well. He didn't like him because there's got to be something where they can connect the dots of racial animus. That's right. It's just like when someone stabs someone 40 times.
Yes.
The first 2-3 times, because the person was attacking you, I can actually. 40 times, there's something else going on. 9 minutes and 29 seconds. That is something else.
Well, grinding his knee
8 minutes
into his neck. I said, wait a minute. Yeah. And you heard the bystander say, oh, you liking this? You like doing? Oh, no. I mean, in April 2016, he depressed the lingual artery in this person's neck. Yeah. He's got there's something going on here. And I think we need to pay attention, close attention to 30 seconds. Robert Patello, 30 seconds. What should we be on the lookout for today? Well, you, CK, because you're going to be talking about this.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Sorry, I dropped the phone.
No, it's okay. 30 seconds.
We should be on the lookout for exactly what the witness pleads the fifth to and what the line of questioning is and what they're trying to establish. I believe this is one of those de-singer witnesses where you're simply trying to front to the jury that, yes, there were drugs bought, it's the individuals they bought them from, but that has literally absolutely nothing to do with these people who murdered George Floyd, and that's the information they're trying to get out of this witness.
I cannot wait to see it today.
I can tell you.
20 seconds.
CK. What we have to look for the cross-examination of this witness. They're going to try their case through this witness. This is a very risky witness. They're going to try their case and their theories through this witness, and we just better pray it doesn't explode.
Well, you know what? I pray that I can have you back on in the morning, both of you, so we can break this down, because I think today is going to be the very interesting day. I don't know about you.
Absolutely.
I think today is going to be very interesting. This man was in the car with George Floyd, and they had a relationship. I wonder what cross-examination, I wonder what the whole thing's going to look like. You don't want to miss this, everybody. This is how the system works. More of the Santita Jackson Show coming back with John Nichols talking about infrastructure. What's in that bill? Why is Joe Manchin pushing up against it? What's in it for you? More of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes.
This is Chicago's Progressive
CK.
Talk, 8:20 a.m.
Santita, yes. And just so you know, I'm trying to get people for you as well who are in the courtroom. Just FYI.
Oh, girl, thank you. come on, because I want to know what they're seeing, because I
be in
know
control. We don't
it's a
want
whole
a
different
world
deal
of
being in that
chaos.
courtroom.
We don't want it to be
Nichols is here.
Absolutely.
max. We
I
want
don't
there
think
to
I'd be
be
able to take
something
it, though.
behind it.
So
Whether it's
thank
a
you. And
god
you
or
have
a dark
Jonathan's number.
cabal. We
You're
need to
covering
blame
for him
something.
today,
So
Yes,
right?
we connected.
for that. And
Yes,
now
he's
it's
coming.
so
He's
much easier
talking
to
today.
find things
And
that
he's
fit your
been Trump,
narrative.
and then one of George Floyd's family members who was in the courtroom with them.
Oh, you have a good time
Saturdays
today.
at 6 p.m.
Oh, I wish I could
on
listen.
WCPT 820.
I know.
To me,
But anyway,
the
I'll
most
send you the
important thing
recording
about
after
being
if you want.
Please, do you not
Yeah,
want to
you-
hear?
is
Thank you.
participating. Living life to the fullest.
But I just so you
Emphasis on
know,
living.
I am working on
This
that
is
because I
what
think it
makes
would be
life.
wonderful if we could get,
How much
from
of
time
life
to
are
time
we
someone
willing
who's in the
miss out on?
courtroom to do commentary on your show in the morning
I would love
to
to.
give the different so
Increases
that
the risk of falls by 50%.
the listeners can hear
Good hearing
how the
health is
lawyers
essential to
perceive it,
staying engaged
analyzing it,
and
versus how the
doing what we
people in
love.
that courtroom
Hear
are
about it
reacting.
and
Would
stay
you
vital.
That's
please
what's
Get a
critical.
help me with that? Because I'd love for us to talk about that.
HearingHealthCheck@hearwellstayvital.org.
You know, that would be great.
Absolutely.
And it would be great for this Minneapolis audience.
You're listening to WCPT
It would.
820.
And if it weren't
Here's the
for
latest
COVID,
Chicago
I'd be
traffic
there in the
updates.
courtroom doing that for you. But
Oh, honey, you
I just-
know.
Better news this morning on
Well, you know I'd have you
eastbound.
doing that. Come
Now
on.
They have the two right lanes blocked.
The
still
people's
slow
attorney.
traffic
I would.
delays, though, between Ripley and the Indiana Toll Road.
Well,
Also on
so
89
Santita, thank you for this. I'm saying prayers for the George Floyd family, frankly, because this is tough. This is tough. Their loved one was murdered brutally in front of the world, and yet they have to sit through the indignity and humiliation of hearing him demonized and things and talked about like a dog.
And watch
And
it
so-
over and over and over
And
again.
watch it over and over again.
Mhm. It's too much.
Yeah.
But I love you, CK, but we'll have you here tomorrow morning. So,
Okay.
so let me know if you can get someone who's
Alrighty.
been in the courtroom. I would love to have.
I've already planted the seed.
Okay.
I already planted the seed.
You have
Because
girls.
it kind of came together late yesterday, but I planned the seed for you. So I'm working that.
You have girls. Thank you for looking out for me, girl. Oh, I need to speak with you today if I can. I have something I need.
Okay,
I need
absolutely.
your attention. I need your help on something.
Okay.
It's legal.
I will be there. I'll give you a call this afternoon.
Oh, please.
After my show, like around. Okay, I'll give you a call.
Yeah, because I'll be back because I'm going to do therapy with my father this morning, and then
The shippers are coming at noon,
Then
so
we're
we gotta
done.
get this done.
Like at Dennis's plastic
Okay.
startup, to stay
Okay.
flexible, he needs to get started
Since
hiring
I'm-
right,
Since I'm now a
right
voice
away.
therapist, okay. Here we go. Speech.
Indeed, you do. And the moment you sponsor a
You
job
are
on
the
Indeed, you get a short
magnificent
list
daughter,
of quality
and I have to tell
candidates
you,
from our
Santita,
resume database. Visit
there's no better place to
Indeed.com/credit
be.
and get a
Embrace
$75
moment.
credit
Oh,
for your
I am.
first sponsored job.
Girl, I am.
Terms and
Trust me, I'm
conditions
taking
apply.
it. As I told him, I
This is
said,
a
it's an honor and a
WCPT
privilege to be
moment
able
in
to do this.
labor.
And he just
The
looked at me
story
and
of
said,
the
well, thank you. I
Luddites and
said,
what they fought for
you've been
has
carrying me
consisted
all
of
of your life.
violence
You
and
kidding me?
rejecting technology. So
I said,
much
but
so
Dad,
the
I
word
said, but Dad,
Luddite
you're
is
going to do
used
this
to
the right
describe
way.
someone's ineptitude or
He
unwillingness
just
to
shot
accept
me a look. I
technology.
said, oh,
A
you don't have to give me
closer
that
look
Grandma
shows the
Helen
Luddites
look.
were neither. The Luddites had come into prominence in Yorkshire
I know that look.
Oh, yeah. I said, tell me, Dad, you're trying. Don't look at me like that.
Combination Act, effectively outlawing unions. This,
It's
combined with
wonderful. Well, send my
technological
love also
changes
to your
within the
mom
textile
Okay, I
industry,
will.
were increasingly
Everyone,
leaving highly
and
paid
I will
skilled
report back
workers out
to you
of
on
work
who we
because their
have
job could now be done
to
cheaper and faster by
to come on your
unskilled
show, because
workers who were
when they come on your
frequently
show, it'll
injured
be
by the new
before
machines.
court.
In
So
reality,
I
the
cannot
Luddites
wait.
were neither inept
you know,
nor against
so
technology.
it might
They
take me a day or
smashed
so,
the
but
machines as a form
I've already
of
planted the
protest,
seed,
wanting the
and
machines to be
today
safer
I will
and
have a
run by
much better
apprentice
idea.
workers who got
Okay.
paid a decent wage.
And
This
it
has
could
been
be,
a
and it might be Ben,
WCPT moment in
which would be
labor.
great.
Oh, I love
But I
it.
also would love to have a member of the family.
You're
I just
listening
think
to
you're right there,
WCPT
you know,
820,
your
because
audience would
facts
like to hear it because they don't have that perspective.
Well, let me
This
know.
is the
I'm
probably
coming
would
up.
be,
Jackson Show.
Okay, let me.
all right.
Oh,
Okay,
wow,
bye-bye.
everybody. I love you, CK Hoffler. I'm Santita Jackson, WCPT 820 in Chicago, AM 950 radio. Minneapolis, St. Paul. Of course, we're covering this trial, and so we're going to be talking about that. But a lot of things are going on right now, including this infrastructure bill. I mean, it's a lot of money. It's trillions of dollars. It's needed to rebuild America. Joe Manchin is standing in between it because of the corporate taxes. But I think we need to know what's in the bill. What's in it for you? What's in it for you? It's a transformative plan. That is the headline in The Nation. Biden's transformative plan redefines infrastructure to include caregiving. Now, mind you, this is something Republicans are pushing back on. John Nichols from The Nation magazine. But what's in this bill? It seems like there's a lot in this for us, for the average person.
Mm-hmm. There really is, and it is a transformative bill. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for, by the way, if I could just say up front, for your exceptional coverage of the George Floyd trial and everything that's going on with it. You've been just doing a terrific job, and I know a lot of people are listening. Carry on with that, and I also appreciate that you're paying attention to the other things that are occurring as well in this moment, because it's such a remarkable time. And there is a danger if we don't pay it structure bill. We run the risk of losing the good parts. And that's sort of the key. So let's talk for a moment about the good parts. First and foremost, it's a $2.2 trillion bill. So this is huge. This is what progressives have been asking for. They've been saying, go big. Don't cut the corners at this point. You have control of the White House, the House of Representatives, and the Senate, as difficult as that may be. And so you need to use this moment to go big. $2.2 trillion is big. It's maybe not enough in some areas, but it's a lot. It's got a huge amount of money for the traditional stuff: bridges, roads, buildings, and that matters. That's the FDR, Franklin Roosevelt, Civilian Conservation Corps, WPA, use of the federal government to build big and necessary things. Same thing Eisenhower did with the interstate highway system. So that's there. But then there's also a second component, which is a recognition of the fact that this is a changing time in history, and there's going to be a next economy with automation, with robotification, with all of these changes that are taking place. People are going to need to be trained for the next generation of jobs. And what's important is there's a racial justice and a social justice component in that assures that the next generation of jobs, as they come, don't just go to those who are wealthy, connected, who have always been in the best position. So there are efforts there to make sure that the research is done, the development is done in the right way. There's a lot of money for that. That's a big deal. There is also an understanding of the importance of the digital future that we're coming into for economic, social, and educational reasons. And so there's a huge investment in broadband internet for rural areas and for urban areas. This is a big deal so that kids don't get left behind. They don't have to sit in a parking lot outside a library trying to catch a internet signal because they don't have good internet at home. So this is there's a big justice component to this. There's a big future component. But the final thing that I want to emphasize and that people should be aware of is the most transformational component of the bill. And that is that by the Biden administration, frankly pressured by activists for over many years, and people have been working on this in unions and in social justice groups, is redefining infrastructure to take note of the human infrastructure that makes our world work. And that is, there's $400 billion, that's billion with a B, $400 billion in this bill to transform the circumstance of caregivers. And caregivers are the people who take care of our parents, of our kids, of people with disabilities, of everyone in society who needs a little help to live their life, to make it through. And this is different from healthcare, although caregivers may also have a real healthcare component. A caregiver is somebody who is there with you at home, who is there with you at the living center, who is there with you in a setting that needs that extra help. Now, caregivers are primarily, overwhelmingly, women. Caregivers are also disproportionately, overwhelmingly, people of color. And they are some of the worst paid people in our society. These are folks who get up before dawn, work till after dark, and go across town on the bus to get someplace to do their work, do it 5-6 days a week, and then come home with a check that barely gets them to the poverty level, sometimes doesn't even get them to the poverty level. So what Biden has done in this bill is expand access to care. That's a big deal, expanding through Medicare, Medicaid. Also set all sorts of structures to get more resources to caregivers so that they can get fair pay, real benefits, respect on the job, the support they need on the job, so that these jobs are transformed. That's a good thing for everyone. It gets resources, I mean, it's work and resources into society, but it's also, I want to emphasize, it's a good thing for the people who need care, because if caregivers are well paid with good benefits, with the support they need, with the respect they need, and if that's backed up by the government, we create a situation where your caregiver will stay with you for a long period of time, will be able to, have stability in her life. And that's transformational for all of society.
What is the pushback? Because I've seen the right wing, and really, I would say corporatist, because it's not just Republicans; it's Democrats too who are corporatist. They're saying the corporate tax rate is it's too high. They're saying that there's much more in this than roads and bridges. We're talking about caregivers. We're talking about jobs. We're talking about infrastructure to me is more than the physical. It is caregivers, right?
That's right.
Because if you don't have a caregiver, you can't leave your mother or father at home, or you can't function on your job. I mean, so what is the pushback, particularly now?
Well, it's a great question because I think, I mean, I acknowledge all of my failings as a human being, but I think I just gave you a description of a pretty good package there, right?
Yeah.
We're getting our roads and bridges. We're getting our internet built out. We're planning for the future, and we're giving a fair treatment to the people who really sustain the human infrastructure of our society. So that ought to be pretty attractive. So what are our Republican friends and some of our Democratic friends saying about this? Well, they're saying it's too expensive. $2.2 trillion is too much. They don't seem to remember when they were giving away trillions of dollars of tax cuts to multinational corporations and billionaires just a couple of years ago. So as you see, they have a moving target, right? Mm-hmm. They're very concerned about the cost of things when Democrats are in charge, through the Republicans, but they're not concerned when they're in charge, right? So there's a certain hypocrisy here, and it is, I think, can fairly be described as folks who simply don't want Joe Biden to succeed, and I say that bluntly. Without apology, I think there's just that reality. There may be some real fiscal hawks, folks who really do fret all the time about spending, but there are very few of them. The fact is, there's a lot of hypocrites. So that's one thing, just basic hypocrisy. Second thing is, there are a lot of people who are there in the service of corporations and not of humanity and not of the great mass of people. And they look at these proposed corporate taxes. They don't like that. But again, they're being hypocritical. Joe Manchin is saying, well, I don't like the 28% tax. I think it should be 25%. Well, you know as well as I, if Joe Biden had said 31%, then Manchin would be saying 28. He's just grabbing a number out of the air and saying, kind of being contrarian. And the weird thing is that back in the past, Manchin has supported a 28% tax on corporations. So it's just an absurdity that he is kind of pushing and pulling and trying to be in the headlines, trying to have influence on this thing. And so that's one part of it. And unfortunately, that's what politics is. We see a lot of that. There's another part of it, though, and that is that there's a lot of pushback with this argument that, this includes things that aren't usually in infrastructure bills. And this is where progressives, frankly, this is where President Biden's going to have to really argue their case, because it's absurd to suggest that an infrastructure bill in this era should only be roads and bridges. These roads and bridges have to be fixed. The money has to go to them because we do need it. It's vital. You can ask Keith Ellison or Ilhan Omar about when the bridge collapsed up in Minneapolis. I mean, these are vital issues that have to be addressed. So, of course, the money has to go to these things. But we also, if this is going to be about jobs, if this is going to be about the future, then we've got to invest in R&D. We've got to invest in broadband build-up. And we have to invest in caregiving. This is a country where people are aging. And as we have more and more baby boomers, if you will, move into that older age group, in that older demographic, you're going to need a lot of care. And this has a huge impact, not just on people who need the care, but on their families. So it's logical stuff to have it there. And the pushback against it is, frankly, it's unrealistic. It is, trying to, capitalize on a kind of a narrow vision of things, trying to play on people's stereotypes rather than to play on a vision for the future. And one final thing, if I can, Santita, and this is a big deal. I think there are a number of Republicans, perhaps some Democrats as well, who are very concerned about expanding this definition of infrastructure to include the caregivers, because if the government of the United States gets involved in creating the structures and the guarantees of care for the elderly, for people with disabilities, for children, for others, if we really start to expand that out, that is going to be as transformational as Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. In the future, if this happens, we will say, how we always say we want to protect Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. In the future, we'll say we want to protect Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and care. And the bottom line is this. If there are protections within there for caregivers, if these structures are changed, this will be immensely popular. It will be transformative. It will begin to really form the social safety network or social safety net that we need as a society. And when that happens, our Republican friends get very concerned because, of course, it shows the value of government. It makes government work. It becomes very popular, and they can't undo it.
Call me or text me, 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. What is in the infrastructure bill for you? I do realize, everybody, that the George Floyd trial has been riveting, and we should pay attention because this is how our justice system works. This is why you need to be registered to vote, because if you're not registered to vote, you have no way of getting on that jury. And if you want to influence events, if you want to shape the society as you feel that it ought to be shaped, you got to get involved. But this is also part of your involvement. This is why we voted in record numbers last fall for such a time as this, so that we could get the monies on the ground that the corporations have been getting, John Nichols. And it's just amazing to me that in this time of profound want, and maybe it's because we're not calling it a depression, but where I live, people are feeling a depression. People have not gotten their jobs back, John. They're not making any money. Then if they get sick with COVID-19, if you get sick with anything, you cannot afford, even with insurance, to pay for your copay. I mean, you just can't afford it. You need some relief. And not just relief, we need a fundamental restructuring of our society so people cannot continue to fall through, not the cracks, just fall through the floor. There's no floor beneath which you can't fall now.
That's so right. You said it. And this is the key thing. The first big bill that came through under Biden and the Democrats, which was the American Rescue Plan, that was passed not that long ago. It's a big bill, $1.9 trillion. But understand, that was going to address the circumstances of the moment, right? That we still have a need for an immense amount of health care because of the COVID pandemic, which is resurging in many areas. We have to pay for this vaccination plan. We have to make our state and local governments functional after they poured resources into addressing the crisis over the last year. And we have to address unemployment, the difficult and unstable situation a lot of families find themselves in because of lack of sufficient work, even if they're working, not working enough. The challenge of paying for the rent, paying for food, all of that. So that was the first bill. That was a necessary bill, but that was an emergency bill in the moment. Now we're talking about a bill that makes sure that when we come out of this crisis, we do not come out with all of the same pathologies that we had going in, right? Now, this isn't going to solve all the problems of the world. I want to emphasize, I've got plenty of criticisms of this infrastructure bill. It's insufficient in many ways, but it at least seeks to try and transform people's circumstances and society's circumstances. And it does so in the right way. It begins with the people who do some of the hardest work and get some of the least pay. It addresses fundamental inequalities in our society. There are listeners to this show this morning. I can guarantee you, people who, got up before dawn are already at work, right?
and are providing care either in a home setting or in an institutional setting of some kind. And they're working hard. They're lifting things up. They're helping people move around. They don't get a break. They may get to listen to the radio in the background, and that's a wonderful thing. But boy, they can't watch television or do something else because they're really physically involved in, the fundamental work of helping people to survive, helping people to get through their days, providing that care that is needed. And yet, these folks, overwhelmingly women, overwhelmingly people of color, these folks come home, right, after that very long day, after doing all that hard work. They've got to care for their own family, right? And they've got to, do all the stuff in their own lives, and they don't get a paycheck that is much better than if they were working at McDonald's. And again, I respect the people that work at McDonald's. I respect the people that work, in an Amazon warehouse, hopefully getting unionized in short order. I respect everybody who works, but come on. Caregivers in our society, living on poverty wages, living on barely enough to survive. There's something fundamentally wrong with that. It was wrong before COVID-19, and it will be wrong after if we don't change it. And so what Biden is proposing is a fundamental change. Understand, a quarter of this bill, roughly 25% of this bill, is going to transforming care. And we, progressives, need to understand that as this is the big one. This is the transformational investment that activists have been asking for a long time. Again, is it sufficient? No, I'd like to see more. I think there should be more. But is it an incredible down payment on the future? Yes. And it is a economic and social and racial justice initiative that actually responds to the long-term work of progressive activists in this area, people like Ajahn Poo and others within the National Domestic Workers Group and People's Action and all sorts of organizations, Service Employees International Union and others who've been working on these issues for a long time. We sometimes get so frustrated because we work and work and work on things and change doesn't come. Well, here's the case where change is actually coming and we're getting pushback. Well, if you're getting pushback on the change that's actually coming, when it's finally arriving, that's the point at which to get active and get engaged and to fight for something.
What can we do about a Joe Manchin, about a Kristen Sinema, or just even our own representatives who are not falling into line? There's too much of a disconnect, it appears, John, between the people's needs and what the politicians are legislating. It's just, Joe Manchin is from an impoverished state, which, thanks to Senator Byrd, is the most subsidized state in the United States, or at least it has been. Might not be anymore, but it certainly is in the top 3, if you will. I mean, they get a lot of federal money to survive from day to day. What's the deal?
Well, look, Joe Manchin is a Democrat in a state that has trended Republican. And so he is not figuring out how to deal with that. And you know what the weirdest thing is? The Republican governor of that state, Jim Justice, has been supporting all sorts of, major spending initiatives. And so the weird part is the Republican in West Virginia gets that they need to spend money, right? And he's been on the, way ahead on vaccinations and things like that. The Democrat seems to be resisting. He seems to be scared. He seems to be worried about everything. So, look, I mean, if he's scared, if he responds to, his political fears, the way to speak to that is to organize people on the ground there in West Virginia and get the message across. And there are people doing the work. Here's one of the things that's happening. A coalition of care groups and groups that have been involved in working particularly to improve the circumstance of women in the workplace and in society economically are going to be spending a lot of money. I think it's $20 million up front to organize on the ground in the states of specific senators and to put ads on radio, TV, social media to really fight for this thing. And that's good because too frequently, you get a good piece of legislation, there's some headlines, maybe even a little talk about it, and then nobody does the sufficient push for it that it goes forward. And then you have that terrible risk that in the negotiations, the so-called conference committees in Congress, that they get to the point where, the House passed one thing, the Senate passed another. How can we cut this down a little? And of course, what do they cut down? You know as well as I where they will do the cuts is on that human side for the caregivers. And so we have to be fighting now in the states, specifically in the states where you have senators who may be vulnerable to going the wrong way, and that's Manchin. It's also Sinema in Arizona, although I think she got a real earful out of the last fight. And remember, Arizona, think about this, my friend. Think about Arizona. What do a lot of people do? How do they get to Arizona? They retire, right? And so you've got a state with a lot of older folks who have a need for care. And so there is a state where, to my mind, the message is not hard to deliver, right? So you can speak to it there. In West Virginia, again, a state with a tremendous need for caregiving and frankly for all this other stuff. We don't want to underemphasize a state like West Virginia, the need for broadband build out to get the internet to every corner of that state. And frankly, the need for this R&D, I emphasize that a lot because it's not talked about enough. There are billions and billions of dollars in this bill to go and research how do you make sure the job, people are trained for, that they have they have what they need to do them, but B, to make sure that they are fairly distributed, that they don't just go to people who, live on the coast and have always had advantages, that they go broadly in a society so that we don't recreate the inequalities that already exist. And there's a lot of money for that. That's a really important investment. And it's one that frankly, look, you and I both had our criticisms of Joe Biden along the way. We've recognized that he hasn't always been perfect, and I think he'd be the first one to say that. And yet, I give him credit. I give his administration credit for responding to the activists who have said, you can't just do things the way it's always been done. It has to be done better this time. And this bill, in many ways, respects that.
Well, I don't want him to be perfect. I just want him to be politically prudent. And that is to respond to the needs of the people. And that is what he is doing. He's a politician, and he is responding to his times. He is not just playing to the former slave state that he represented. Oops. He is now representing the United States of America that is in a profound crisis that has fallen behind. The last minute belongs to you. John Nichols from The Nation magazine.
Look, I'm going to close the way we so often do, Santita, and that is to say that we came to know each other. Our roots are in Jesse Jackson's campaigns in 1984, 1988. Those campaigns talked about infrastructure a lot, and they talked about a redefinition of infrastructure to be about jobs and human beings and what we need. And it's amazing that it's taken this long, but the fact of the matter is that many of the ideas that were put on the table in 1984 and 1988 are beginning to be embraced by at least some Democrats. Our job is to make sure that at this critical juncture, we don't slow down at all. We keep making those bigger demands. And when we win, that we recognize that the Reverend Jesse Jackson helped to start a lot of this a long time ago.
And having picked up the baton from Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, it's a relay race. We see you carrying on. We see Bernie, we see Nina Turner, we see AOC, we see everybody, we see Jamal Bowman, we see all these people moving forward. This is about the people's agenda, everybody. This is about you knowing that in this infrastructure bill, you have got skin in the game. So you need to call your representative and get it passed. And then once that gets passed, we need to get some more. How about that? I love you, John Nichols from The Nation magazine.
I love you more, Santita Jackson.
Impossible. I love everybody. Can't wait to be with you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. Love you, John. Bye. John Nichols.
This is a WCPT
Hey,
Veteran Minute.
I am
On
going to
April
let
5th,
you go today, sweetie. You know what I'm doing? I have now
Lieutenant
become
Coleman Young
one of my
led a group of
father's
black
speech
officers of the
therapists.
477th.
So I've got to
They
hurry
attempted
on
to
over.
grab whites-only officers
Well, you
in
get,
Indiana.
you do that work. You do that work, and if I can help it anyway, because I will tell you, his speech therapy, right? That's important because there's still a lot for him to say, and we want to make sure that he's able to say it all as effectively as possible.
Well, you know, I pushed him so hard on Saturday, you know, because I was like, you know, let me hear what you're saying, and I said, no, you're not doing this correctly. Oh well, no. So I sat with him for about 90 minutes, and he told me the next day that he said I'm actually sore. My stomach and my chest are sore. He said, but in a good way. I said, yeah. I said, because I'm a concert singer, you are a preacher. We use the same mechanism. I sing, you preach.
That's right.
I said, but it's the same, you need the same lung capacity, wingspan, if you will, respiratorily, all of that. I said, and you're not getting that, and they're not pushing you that way. I said, but I know what you need to get. So now I've got to go over to the house in a few minutes. I'm going to be with him for 90 minutes, and I'm going to go through all of these things with him, so that he can, you know, so that I can.
So good.
Yeah, because I want him to do his thing.
So good. It's so good that you're doing that, and I have to tell you, you know, the good thing about him is, and I know I've been around you. There's times he'll push back a little bit and grumble, but the good thing about him is he knows why you're doing this, right? Because at his heart, he's a communicator, and what a tragedy if at a time when he's still got so much to give, if he couldn't communicate effectively. This is the critical, you know what I mean? This is the big work to get this circle closed.
I said, I said, you don't need to say it all the time. I said, but you need to say what you need to say when you need to say it. I said, and that is something, quite frankly, I said, while you still have the ability, I want to help you with this. I said, but you can't let these people play with you. I said, they don't know this. And maybe, because of my own background. And one of the things, when I went to work for Roberta Flack, she said, first thing you've got to have is an education in this. You must be trained. And my father said, I knew she was going to do that. That's why I felt that she would be good for you, because I know how much you like training. And she is a former teacher, and she has a PhD. She is her dissertation away from her PhD. So that's
man.
She went to college. She got a full scholarship to Howard at 13. She's a brilliant woman.
Oh,
yeah. She's like,
my goodness.
She's like scary bright, and when you're around her, she's like scary bright. But that's what you hear, and I got that from. That's one of the wonderful things that I got from her. But now I understand what my teachers have been telling me about. Wait a minute, placement, positioning, all of that. So I'm gonna, head on out of here and get to him, so I can exercise him today. But I want to get you. Oh, I love you, but I want you to come back on even before, because I'd love for you to weigh in on this case.
Oh, on the floor trial, I'll tell you, man. This is the best public education that we've had on criminal justice, because everybody's watching it, right? And this is one that really matters. And so it's like every little nuance of it matters, because people are starting to see things and hear things and understand things. And the more closely people watch it, right? The more closely people watch it, the more they are going to get a sense of how things go right, but also how things can go wrong in trials like this. It's very, very good to be on top of it. And the last thing I would say is we are starting to see some truth telling by senior police figures, right? When you got that police chief on saying, no, that isn't how we do it. That's not how we're supposed to do it. I mean, this is really important stuff. It's not, we haven't come to the promised land. There's a lot of work to be done, but this isn't, this is a big deal. There will be books and movies and scholarly explorations of this for 100 years to come. So we ought to all be paying attention now as it's happening, because it matters. It matters in profound ways, and it will influence every other city and every place else. So
Oh,
it's a
absolutely.
big deal.
Oh, and this is really, really big deal for everybody. For everybody, for a whole
Uh-huh.
lot of reasons. So I'm a and you know, because I have to see him, and of course the trial's going to be beginning, and I've got to do a television show in the middle of that. But I'm, you
Oh my
know,
gosh.
I know. Look, it's just we've got a lot going
I
on.
like that you have busy. I like that you have busy days. Busy
Thank
days
you.
they keep you strong. I don't want you to have too busy.
Right now, that's what I've got. But you know what? In fact, I'm gonna call you because I have an opportunity that we're working on, and I need I need your help with this.
I can help in any way I can.
Oh, you can, because it's going to require that you be on camera for the show. So we're going to talk about that.
Oh,
okay.
If I can help, I will.
Oh, no, I know you. I know you can. I'm going to work it. We're going to work it out.
Will you say hi to your father?
I will. Call him when you can.
All the support. I will, and I look forward to hearing him.
Absolutely.
I look forward to hearing his good voice now that you got him moving in the right direction.
Well, I think his therapist started, and now that they've started, I just, it's having him understand that this is something. Therapy is not something you stop once you leave the clinic. It's something they're showing you what you need to be doing every day throughout the day, and it's exhausting, which means that he would have to curtail his schedule, which he does not want to do. And I can appreciate that.
Of course he doesn't. No.
I said, I got it, but that's not what I said, this is what you need to do right now.
Well, and you have to help him to understand he's going to have to do this for the rest of his life, right? And it doesn't mean it'll be as hard as right now, but he's going to have to work at this. We know that it's going to require a commitment. But who do you know in your life who's better at committing to something than your dad?
Well, yeah. Well, I'm so glad to have him.
If he's determined to do it, he can make it. He can do this.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know it.
Absolutely.
And you can help him do it. All right, sister. Go and do your work.
Oh, Lord. Thank you.
And call me anytime. I'll talk to you, and I love you, and I'm praying for you,